These small critters are embarking on a big move. Nearly 200 million red crabs are making their annual migration back to the ocean, crossing Christmas Island.
Somewhere in the Indian Ocean sits an island where the ground literally moves. Not from earthquakes or volcanic tremors, but from something far stranger. A living red carpet of crustaceans so dense that roads disappear beneath waves of migrating crabs. For millions of years, this bizarre spectacle unfolded undisturbed, drawing film crews from every major nature documentary you've ever watched. Then one day, cargo ships arrived carrying invisible passengers, and within a decade, between 15 and 40 million crabs lay dead, their ecosystem collapsing in a domino effect so catastrophic that scientists had to deploy one of the most unconventional rescue missions in conservation history. Welcome to Christmas Island, Australia's most remote territory, floating about 200 miles south of Java, but separated by roughly 900 miles of ocean from the Australian mainland. This 52-square-mile speck, nearly 6 times smaller than Singapore, has been geologically isolated for over 37 million years. That's an eternity in evolutionary terms, long enough for species to develop that exist absolutely nowhere else on Earth. And because no land-based predators ever colonized this isolated paradise, crabs didn't just survive here, they became the undisputed rulers of an entire ecosystem. Over 70% of the island is protected national park land, and at the center of this protected realm lives a population of roughly 200 million red crabs. These aren't just random inhabitants scuttling around, they're ecosystem engineers performing vital functions that keep the forest alive. They clear fallen leaves that would otherwise smother new growth. They turn the soil, aerating it and mixing nutrients. They recycle organic matter, transforming dead vegetation into the building blocks for new life. The island's entire ecological balance depends on these creatures. Even the tourism industry relies heavily on them. Approximately 80% of visitor revenue is directly tied to the spectacular annual crab migration season. But then something arrived that would shatter this ancient equilibrium. The yellow crazy ant. Don't let the amusing name fool you. These insects rank among the top 100 most dangerous invasive species on the planet. They're called crazy, not because they're mentally unstable, but because their behavior is utterly erratic and unpredictable. They dart around frantically, attack with shocking ferocity, and seem to possess absolutely no sense of fear or self-preservation. Nobody knows exactly when they arrived, though experts suspect they hitchhiked from Southeast Asia sometime during the 20th century aboard cargo ships docking at the island. With zero natural predators to control their population, they exploded across the landscape, forming supercolonies that reach densities of 7.5 billion individuals within single interconnected networks. That's more than twice the entire human population of Earth, except condensed into a relatively tiny geographic area. During the rainy season between October and November, these ants emerge from their moist underground nests and advance across the island at a terrifying pace, roughly 3 feet per day. And when they encounter red crabs, the real horror begins. Yellow crazy ants attack using formic acid, one of the most potent natural acids found in the animal kingdom. A single red crab can be completely killed within just 24 hours. The attack method is nightmarish. Thousands of ants swarm a crab and spray formic acid directly into its eyes, blinding it. Then, while the crab stumbles helplessly, the ants tear it apart piece by piece. The acid is so powerful that dogs have gone blind from exposure, and human skin burns on contact. Crab burrows that once teemed with life became nurseries for ant colonies. According to biologists studying the invasion, somewhere between 15 and 40 million red crabs were wiped out in just a few years. When you remember the island only had about 200 million crabs at peak population, you realize this represents a catastrophic loss. But the crabs weren't the only casualties. 20 other endemic species found themselves pushed to the brink of extinction. As the crabs disappeared, ecological functions they performed vanished too. Fallen leaves piled up with nobody left to clear them, creating perfect fuel for intense wildfires. Young trees grew too densely without natural thinning, suffocating the forest canopy. Mold spread rapidly through the altered environment, killing vegetation in massive die-offs. Seabirds lost critical nesting habitat. The soil became nutrient depleted. The entire ecosystem collapsed in a cascading chain reaction. To understand why these ants achieved such devastating dominance, you need to know about their secret weapon, the yellow lac scale insect. This tiny creature, once praised by humans as a valuable tropical forest resource, became a biological weapon that amplified the ant invasion exponentially. For centuries, people extracted shellac from these insects, using the natural resin to manufacture vinyl records, fine lacquer, and classical musical instruments. But on Christmas Island, what was once a resource transformed into an ecological catastrophe. The yellow lac scale feeds on tree sap and produces a sweet substance called honeydew that yellow crazy ants find irresistible. In exchange for this food source, the ants protect the scale insects like farmers guarding dairy cattle, even eliminating the scale's natural enemies to help their herds grow. Researchers discovered that yellow crazy ant populations increased by as much as 95% when yellow lac scales were present, a terrifying expansion rate equivalent to pouring gasoline on an already burning fire. When the red crab population collapsed and the forest began suffocating under its own debris, humans finally attempted to strike back. For years, the only solution was spreading protein bait laced with fipronil, a highly toxic chemical designed to be carried back to ant nests and spread throughout colonies. This bait, marketed as Ant-Off, contained fragrant proteins to attract ants mixed with the poison. Sounds straightforward, except the execution was extraordinarily complicated. Timing was absolutely critical. The bait could only be deployed during the dry season when red crabs remained hidden in their burrows. A single mistake in timing, laying bait during the crab migration, would turn the island's heroes into casualties, with red crabs eating the poison meant for ants and dying in massive numbers. You'd be saving the ecosystem by killing the very creatures that sustain it. Even when timing worked perfectly, results were frustratingly temporary. One helicopter baiting campaign using approximately 6 pounds per acre reduced ant populations by 99% within just 4 weeks. Victory, right? Except within a few months, ants surged back from untreated forest corners as if they'd never been defeated. Worse, fipronil couldn't distinguish between invasive ants and beneficial native insects, disrupting food chains and sparking fierce debate among conservationists. Were they sacrificing one ecosystem to save another? The island's brutal terrain created additional obstacles. Cliffs, dense jungle, and deep valleys prevented helicopters from reaching many areas. Rangers carried bait sacks on foot, trekking for hours through swarms of acid-spraying ants. One misstep could turn a ranger into the ants' next meal. Each large-scale baiting operation cost between $1.3 and $2 million, not including manpower, helicopters, and equipment. And all of it worked like mowing weeds without pulling roots, incredibly expensive yet far from permanently effective. When chemical solutions proved inadequate and money kept disappearing into endless baiting campaigns, scientists conceived something genuinely strange: an army from the sky made of 18,000 parasitic wasps, each smaller than a grain of rice, yet each a biological special agent with a singular mission. Their target wasn't the ants themselves, but rather the yellow lac-scale insects, the food factories sustaining the ant invasion. The wasp species, scientifically known as Tachardioephagus somervillei, is so tiny you could fit 20 on a needle tip. But their biological assassination capability is powerful enough to reshape entire ecosystems. Each female wasp searches for a lac scale, lays an egg inside its body, and the larva then consumes the host from within until nothing remains but an empty shell. Brutal? Absolutely. But that brutality held the key to Christmas Island's survival. Australia had learned expensive lessons about biological control gone wrong. The cane toad, introduced to kill beetles, ended up devastating an entire continent. This time, nobody could afford to repeat that mistake. Scientists spent 3 years testing 131 native species to ensure the wasps would target only lac scales. This became the most carefully researched biological control program in Australian history. Then helicopters released the Invisible Army over 4 critical battle zones: Grants Well, Blowholes, Margaret Knoll, and Circuit Track, places where ants had built supercolonies reaching 7 to 12 billion individuals. And then, just when it seemed the entire ecosystem had reached the point of no return, something miraculous began unfolding. Within only 2 years after deploying the wasp army, scientists returned to one of the island's largest ant supercolonies, a place that once recorded up to 700 ants per square yard, and found fewer than 10 ants remaining. An empire that ruled the forest had collapsed into ruins. That miracle spread faster than any prediction model imagined. Yellow crazy ants no longer poured out like toxic floods with every rainfall. Instead, the true rulers returned. Red crabs began reclaiming roads and trails they'd used for millions of years. They dug burrows again. They reproduced again. And then came the moment that made conservationists worldwide cheer. The number of red crabs joining the Great Migration rose from 40 to 50 million to more than 100 million by 2024. A stunning comeback, doubling the population in just a few rainy seasons. The ecosystem responded accordingly. Ant populations dropped 90% in treated areas. Fallen leaves that once piled dangerously high disappeared, proving the forest's nutrient recycling cycle had returned. Forest patches choked by thick, black, sooty mold slowly turned green again. Even the rare Abbott's booby, pushed toward extinction by dying trees and vanishing nesting sites, escaped the path to oblivion. But the story isn't finished. Yellow crazy ants still control significant portions of the island, maintaining their empire in jungle regions humans haven't reached. With every rainy season, billions of ants awaken, a chilling reminder that this war has no definitive end. Scientists warn that one wrong decision could erase 37 million years of evolution, something no place on Earth could recreate. The question facing conservationists now isn't how to win, but how much they're willing to risk. Should Australia release more aggressive African parasitic wasps capable of attacking scales more effectively, but carrying enormous biological risks? If they escaped, would Australia's agriculture pay the ultimate price? This isn't just a biological challenge anymore, it's an ethical gamble where every decision carries the weight of an entire ecosystem. Christmas Island's battle proves that even a single human mistake can make nature pay the price for millions of years of evolution. Although tiny wasps have reignited hope, the threat from the crazy ant empire continues lurking in unexplored forests, waiting for the next rainy season. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.